I'm 54. I now avoid people. I just don't like to be around large crowds anymore. I've lived my entire world has existed in an environment, prior to me actually retiring, one in which was largely surrounded by people. For years, I loved really, really did love that world. I loved being around people, and I had to deal with people daily. There was always going to meetings, engineering meetings, coming up with solutions, solving problems. Then, of course, as a people leader, you become, in other ways, you're always one-on-one or one-on-five, or giving presentations, giving deliverables. And my entire career was largely existing around working in groups, in teams, in meetings. And rarely was I actually working in isolation. My job wasn't really one in which I was working or needed to work in isolation. And I loved working around people, with people, for people, and I dealt with people on a daily basis. If it was my team, possibly peers, even outside, maybe contractors, other folks, I was always dealing with people. And I loved it. I lived and breathed it. I really enjoyed it. But as time goes on, you realize that takes energy. It takes serious energy, and it saps the soul out of you, or it can. Now, there's a couple of types of people that I often found that can really have a major impact on how you carry yourself going forward, and how much you really want to be around people. Two different types. One, of course, is that type of personality that is, it just brings you up. A good friend of mine that I used to work with at the old organization, he's a classic of that. We still keep in touch, and largely because he's one of these people that does nothing but be, he's positive, he's always upbeat, he always tries to be supportive and say, look, you can do it, I got you got this, right? Very supportive and very uplifting, and every conversation ends on a very positive note like that, right? Where there's a lot of people that I've also worked with, or certainly that I know in certain circles, that just sap it out. They take your soul and they just stomp on it. And I can't. And so there's too many people in this world these days with this level of negativity and this sapping, this suck that pulls your soul from your body. And it was all well and good when you're in your working careers and you're going through your 20s and your 30s, you just roll with it. Then you get into your 40s and you start realizing that, a lot of these people, you start making decisions who you want around in your life and who you don't, right? Some people learn it a little sooner than others. For me, I learned it a little later. And unfortunately, learning it later meant that it was way later. But the problem is, part of the reason why it didn't help me was because I learned it. I was in the midst of this environment where I had people around me all the time. Now, I really did love my work. I loved the technical aspect of my work. And I loved, pretty much having the team that I had, like the folks that were working with me in my team that were all pulling in my direction or in the team's direction. It felt largely positive. There was a couple that always like to put little barriers and hurdles and put a rock under your tire. There's always a few people like that, and you learn to deal with them, and you learn who they are, and you just know how to move on. But it does take that energy. When you have a team of, say, 15 people, and there's 3 of them that are constantly creating challenges, creating diversions, creating chaos in your life, you realize that chaos isn't what I signed up for. We should all be working on this together. But in a big group environment and a team like I had, you quite often have a real mix. A lot of people that are just trying to show up, do their job, do a good job, just trying to do all the right things. And most of them are largely positive. But you always have a few of those that just want to cause all kinds of drama and disturbance in the peace. And I don't need that. Now, since retiring, of course, now I'm 54. When I retired, I was essentially pushed out of the organization at 53. Okay, shortly thereafter, I changed. I hit the birthday at 54. So technically at 53 is when it all happened for me. Now, what I do like to say is, one thing that I recognized upon departure wasn't just this relief that, I no longer have this job. I no longer have this toxic boss. I don't have that stuff to worry about anymore. but I also didn't have all that drama in the team. Again, while there's some positive, there's always some drama and some drawbacks. Now, as you hit these age, and we all know this, you know what? I'm 54. Here coming up in June, I'll be 55 right away. And that was actually the target date I had anyway for retiring on my own, had the company not decided to punt me down the road. As you're into these ages, and I'm finding more and more now in the 50s, you're finding more people that are my age that are getting sick. They're developing bad conditions, toxic conditions, cancers, some weird things that they had to get treated, some chronic issues now that they have to deal with that they didn't have 3 years earlier. You're hearing more and more of this. I've seen loss in my life, not just what I spoke about, losing family and a few people, older relatives and things like that. But I've also realized that through life, I've had multiple loss, whether it's grandparents, uncles, aunts, but I've also seen younger people. We've had friends. I've lost friends in the 30s. I've lost friends in the 40s. And it really is a stark reminder of how short life is and the fact that why do we possibly want to surround ourselves with toxic people? Now, it's interesting because I've made videos in the past about, where did all my friends go? Where did everybody go? Well, some of that is like, I don't know. And some of it is, thank goodness. Because, when you pop out of the other side and you retire, there's this sort of shock that you often go through. And for me, the shock was, what do I do now? Where is everybody? Nobody's telling me what to do. I don't have any marching orders to do. I don't have this job that's telling me that has this list of criteria that I need to have done by the end of the week. There's no more deliverables. I create that myself now. So along with those, no job, along comes no people. But with that said, initially there was that shock of having nobody around. But then after you leave, and a lot of people will tell you this, a lot of retirees will tell you this, that you often find yourself shedding layer upon layer upon layer of stress. The stress goes bye-bye. You lose that stress. And a lot of it has to do with the job. A lot of it has to do with the fact that you don't have to be up at 5 a.m. You don't have to be hitting the grind and racing the traffic to get to your work. You don't have to be the first one into your parking slot that you always battle with Jojo over there that wanted to beat you in there and try to take that same slot. There's all these little things that add up, all these micro stressors that add up to just one big ball of stress, you see. But it's not just the work, and it's the commute and the deliverables, and I need that project done, and I have to do a speech this afternoon, and all these things. It's not just that. It's people. You see, dealing with people is both positive and negative. And as I've said already, once I left, I started to wonder, where did everybody go? And all that stress just started to fall off my back. But the stress wasn't exclusively related to the job. It was, in fact, related to the people. And so the more I realized this, the less I had to get into these bicker sessions, the less I had to try to talk over somebody or have somebody talk over me in a meeting. See, you get in a meeting and you try to convey yourself, and I worked in a space where I had a couple loud talkers, and they had to be the sight of the office. They had to be heard. They were essentially what I'd consider Tasmanian devils, okay? And they just had to be full of drama, full of noise, full of chaos, move, and just create all this environment that was just conducive to high levels of stress. Well, once I walked away, not only did the job go away, not only did the stress of the job go away, but these people causing that own level of stress went away too. And when that did that, I came to realize something. That while I love talking, with my spouse, my wife, my kids, it's always fun to have those conversations. It's always fun to go out for dinner. We went out for dinner the other night, one of my daughters, it was her birthday. We had a great dinner out there. It was great. We sat in there. I didn't feel like I had to talk a lot, but I said in 2 bits. Everybody had it was a really nice, healthy family conversation. We went out for dinner. We went to the Cactus Club. Anybody aware of that restaurant? This great little spot there at West Edmonton Mall. We went out there the other night, and it was a fun little night out. And it was very not stressful. and if I could say that, pardon my poor English, but I just didn't have the anxiety there. Everybody was on the same page. Nobody was loud talking. I didn't have any Tasmanian devils running around, and things were just nice. Okay, if I can just say peace. And it's that peace that I know I've been looking for a long time, and I just haven't been able to really pinpoint what that piece was missing, where that was missing from. But I realized the job that I had was lacking peace, and a lot of it came from corporate toxicity. A lot of it came from mandates and, toxic bosses that always held you to accounts that were unattainable. It wasn't just that. It was a lot of the people that were in my world, in my life. And so when you come back and you bounce out of that environment, you almost go so far the other way. See, you start in the 0 point, and you live your life with all these stressors and these people, and you're just like, I want them to go away. I want them to go away. Finally, they go away, but your reaction isn't back to 0. Your reaction actually goes beyond for a while, and then it comes back. And what I mean by that is I overshoot because I don't want that toxicity, because I don't want that noise, because I don't want that drama, and I don't want that nonsense. I just want peace, okay? We go into retirement. We hope that we can start doing things on our terms. We don't have to answer for some big deliverable. We don't have that background people, in your office that are talking smack about everybody else, and then you just know that they're talking smack about you when you're not around, because that's just how they are. Well, when I retired, not only did I just return back to okay, I've shed some stress. I don't have to talk to them anymore. As a matter of fact, a couple of them reached out to me when I left. I quickly had a quick chat because a couple of them were folks that I would consider, okay, they were fun ones to work with. Okay, they were. So I entertained it and I answered their call. They had my number for some reason, and they reached out to me and they called me, and how are things doing, and how's your time off? Everything okay? Are you doing fine? And all of this. And it was good. It was a nice attaboy and a nice confirmation that, somebody maybe cares. And I mean, some of it might be that, some of it might be just more curious George. Just curious what happened, right? But, aside from that, once they stopped calling, there were still other communications. There were some texts, there were some other calls, or people had reached out, but they weren't from the camp of, they had good intentions. They were from another camp. They were from a place where there is drama and there is chaos. And I didn't want any of that. So I didn't want to participate in that. And so what you find yourself doing then, not only returning to a 0 point in terms of stress and eliminating that and getting back down to where you feel you're grounded, you get back to a place where you actually overshooting. It's like, not only do I not want to talk to anybody over there, I really don't want to talk to anybody over there. So as much as I loved my job, and I loved the technical aspect, and I've spoken about this, is the toxicity and the corporate games that I hated. But the technical aspect and my team, I enjoyed. But I went so far the other way that I actually wanted no communication with anybody. I would literally sit in a dark room by myself with music just slightly playing. And quite often, I'm going to say it, I went so far deep, some would almost call it depression. And realistically, I probably would too. Because you go from this place of absolute chaos, destructivity, and of course throw some loss on there, which we talked about already. Now all of a sudden I need silence. Have you ever sat in a room, the TV's off, there's nobody in the house, it's pure silence? I mean, nothing. The furnace isn't running, the TV's off, you're the only one at home, and you lay with the lights out. Take a listen for a second. It's loud. Silence is loud. And that's what I started to see. So as I rebounded from getting away from all that chaos, I went back the other way almost to a point where I wanted to get back where I was sitting in that loud silence. I didn't want anything around. I didn't want noise. I didn't want drama. And I was even happier if I was sitting by myself. I didn't want anybody around. With all the loss, with all the chaos and the crap and the corruption, you know what? I know that living and working and being around this high level of stress, chaos, and honestly drama sometimes that people would pull you into that you had no part in, and you all of a sudden somehow get pulled into a conversation. Now you become part of that drama. All of that just created this stress that I've seen people go down from much less stress than that. And when we say that, hey, I'm 54, I'm going almost 55, we're not getting any younger, none of us. Even if you're a 32-year-old viewer, you're not getting any younger, and you've seen your better days. That's just the reality. So I've taken my life from a place of busy, people in front of me every single day, leading people in teams, solving problems, meetings, all of this noise and this busy work, to absolutely, I want none of it. None of it. So that's why, a big reason why you actually end up overshooting. You absolutely end up appreciating life for its simplicity. And I'm not going to go rogue here and say this is, I'm just saying that you start to believe that with all of that, I just need some relax. I mean, that is true sense of R&R. Because it's not the same. You go away after 2 weeks of being retired, you don't feel the same as 2 weeks on vacation. Because if you're in the middle of your career and you go away for 2 weeks, that job still rolls through your mind. And those people in that last comment, and you don't know if you insulted that person by saying it, or maybe you were a little too harsh in how you delivered that message, or maybe you responded a little sharply with that person, or maybe your comment was possibly a little unjustified in that meeting. Whatever it is, these things are all going through your mind and adding stress and things that you don't want. So even 2 weeks on vacation often just puts you in a position where you're not really disconnected. So 2 weeks after I retired, I was disconnected. And I truly felt like I finally found my shtick, if you will. And so, do I like people? Absolutely. People are interesting. People are fun. But as I've also said, coworkers are not your friends, and you have to understand that. So we have to be civil. We have to work with these people. But there's no real way to turn all that off. And so that's why I believe now retirement has given me this opportunity to turn them off. Close my eyes, turn the lights off, and sit there in that loud silence. Because at the end of the day, that is a true level of peace that I finally achieved. With all of that said, of course, everybody, please be sure to check out right there why retiring at 65 is such a mistake. Yes, big statistics to verify that. Trust me, you're going to want to see it. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.